My name is Becky Senf, and I work as Chief Curator at the Center for Creative Photography, and I'm here to give you a tour of our new exhibition, Ansel Adams' Signature Style. This exhibition is a distillation of the ideas that are in my new book called Making a Photographer, the Early Work of Ansel Adams, and this show is designed to convey the basic ideas of the book. And that is to take you from where Ansel Adams starts in his career through to his signature style, which are the pictures that we would recognize as by Ansel Adams. So let's start with this pair. I'm going to come to this side. So these are two pictures of the same photograph, same negative, called Monolith Face of Half Dome, which Adams made in 1927. And what we're looking at are two prints from that same negative. The first on the left is made in 1927, and it's on an uncoated gelatin silver paper, and it characterizes some of his early work. So we see very warm highlights here. Even the dark areas are a warmer black than we'll see in his later work. There's less contrast in this picture and a little bit less detail, in fact, in the earlier print. When we move to the later print, we see that the highlights are a brighter white tone. The blacks are a more neutral black. There's greater contrast from the whites to the shadow areas. And there's also greater detail that comes through in this print. And so this gives us some of the sense of the way in which his printing changes over time. Now I'm going to switch and let's look at this pair of prints of El Capitan in Yosemite Valley. So here we're looking at the same subject but photographed in two different ways. And so the earlier print is from the 1920s, and that's this one. And here we see that it's, again, lower contrast, lighter overall, a kind of gentle presentation of the subject. It's very much about the light reflecting off the mountain and a kind of calm, peaceful, gentle presentation. And in comparison, this larger print from 1948 of the same subject uses the light coming through the clouds, the frothing of the water at the bottom, an angle where we're looking up at El Capitan, so we have a sense of its height and its power. The picture is a much more emotional, dramatic, involved kind of a picture, and demonstrates the way that Adams goes from this more intimate, peaceful approach to the landscape into something that's more dramatic and dynamic. Now, the next group of pictures are works from Ansel Adams's commercial work. And we have a huge number of examples of this commercial work in the Ansel Adams archive. Ansel Adams, in order to make a living, needed to have commercial jobs to support himself. And so he did all kinds of different types of photographs. So everything from architectural views like this, where he's been hired by the architect or the designer in order to document the work that they've done. He did portraits like this one from early in his career of Mrs. Sigmund Stern at her home with all that beautiful wisteria hanging down. He did pictures like this one that was part of an annual report for a corporation in Hawaii, or pictures like this one. This was for Albert Bender, and he was photographing elements of Albert Bender's art collection as documentation. And then this one of a skier in Yosemite National Park is particularly important because Adams's work for Yosemite Park and Curry Company was really influential on his signature style. He worked for Yosemite Park and Curry Company, which was the concessionaire or the provider of the hotel rooms and the dining services in Yosemite, for almost 10 years. And that job, where he reported to the marketing department, actually taught him a lot about how to make pictures that conveyed ideas and emotions to his audience. All right, so then the next several pictures are more examples of what his signature style looks like. So here we get an example from Monument Valley. Next, we're going to see an example from Lake Tahoe. Here again, we've got these incredible clouds creating a sense of drama in the picture. Next is this picture of maroon bells in Colorado that almost feels like it's sparkling and glittering from the frame. And then we're going to look at this picture, Grand Tetons and the Snake River, as a really excellent example of what Adams's signature style includes. So here we're seeing he's chosen a panoramic viewpoint so that he gets the entire sweep of the scene. We don't feel like we're seeing a portion of it, but we're seeing the whole thing. He's also chosen what I call an omniscient viewpoint, which is like a God's eye view. This idea that he's chosen the very best perspective from which to make the picture, the one that is going to convey the most and best information about the scene. He's using weather. So again, we have a band of clouds across the top of the picture, blocking the sun and letting just enough light through to illuminate the mountains and to get this shimmery, silvery reflection on the river, surrounded by dark banks on either side covered with trees. So we have that sense of contrast, the light effects, the weather effects, all of that produces this sense of drama, almost like an operatic quality, a sense that this is all going to change and we're just glimpsing this perfect moment where the scene is going to look like this, and Adams was there to capture it. All of these ideas tell us what he's trying to convey about the value and importance of nature to move us and to give us these really exceptional experiences. So we see that same kind of drama and contrast in this picture of Half Dome in Yosemite National Park. The next picture I actually included to show a contrast to this signature style of Adams's. He also, throughout his career, made many details of photographs, including this one of grasses right after a rainstorm, where you see the little droplets of water on each blade of grass. And rather than pulling way back and giving us the whole scene, here he's moved way in and is focusing us in on a detail that helps us appreciate one of the spectacular little elements that we might find in nature and be inspired by. The exhibition also includes a number of pairings. So here we're seeing two views, again, made in Yosemite National Park. And on the left, we're looking at a little tiny print from 1920 of trees and cliff in Yosemite National Park. And the contrast is very subtle. It's a very soft picture. There's not a lot of sharp detail. And it really contrasts beautifully with this later picture from 1940, where even though we're not yet seeing his full signature style, where he's using the panoramic sweep, we are seeing greater contrast and a more muscular use of photography, something that really conveys the strength and the power and the impact of the landscape in a way that the earlier, more subtle, more intimate picture doesn't yet do. Another one of Adams's great examples of his signature style is this Clearing Winter Storm. The date is not quite certain. It's either late 1930s or early 1940s. But here again, we see him using weather to define the landscape and to create a sense of drama and change and movement and emotional intensity. The next picture that we're going to look at is one of Adams's most famous, and that's Moonrise, which was made in November of 1941, and is another wonderful example of Adams's signature style. In the center's new app, which is called CCP Interactive, that can be downloaded from the App Store or found on the center's website, you can hear an audio tour of this installation, this exhibition, that includes a special part about this picture, Moonrise. Then we see another example of Adams's signature style with these beautiful wispy clouds behind a landscape, a beautiful desert scene where, again, Adams has used the clouds to enhance the way that we read the landscape overall. And then the exhibition ends with two more pairings. So here we've stacked one on top of the other, two pictures that are both relatively early of the same ridge line. It's called Kearsarge Pinnacles. And these show the evolution in Adams's signature style, even though they're both early. So in the earlier picture here, you're looking at trees in front of that Kearsarge pinnacle that in a way creates a more complex, a more subtle way of showing the mountain by using these trees as a framing device. Whereas in the later picture, he's much more direct and much more, in many ways, clear about depicting that mountain ridge. He's eliminated the trees in the foreground and has really focused on the silhouette and the details of the mountain. And this is part of that progression in his overall transition of his style. And then finally, this last pair shows us two different tree pictures. And you may have noticed that the frames in the exhibition are different one to another. So the earlier pictures we framed in this dark wood, and the later pictures in white wood, because that's what Adams preferred through most of his mature career. And so this allows us to show that contrast between the earlier, more subtle works and the later works. But here, with the earlier picture that was made in about 1920, he's made this little vignette, just a small detail that he's extracted from the larger landscape. Whereas in the later picture, the trees are almost like architectural elements and have a kind of strength and boldness that convey a kind of intensity, and we have the forest darkness dropping away from the lighter trees that are almost, they feel like they're right up against the picture plane. And so again, we're seeing him move through these different stylistic elements as he moves towards his signature style. And we hope that this little introduction to the show gives you a sense of how we're organizing the exhibition and the ideas that we're trying to convey. And we hope that you'll dive deeper with the CCP Interactive and with the book, Making a Photographer, the Early Work of Ansel Adams.